Let's open up the OG mailbag alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovies inside Eford Studios in downtown Raleigh. Thanks to Empire Properties and thanks to the Butcher's Market. They bring you the free portion of the OG mailbag. If you want the full thing, head on over to ogtrianglemedia.com. Be part of OG fans for as little as $13 a month. You get premium podcasts like this, the ACC Panic Room, OG on Business, Law of the Wolf, and of course the newsletters to go along with it. And you can save money, Joe, if you buy for the whole year.
You also get a gift. I saw the hats.
Those are for the Founders Club. That's done. That's closed.
Oh.
That's closed. That's
super exclusive.
Super exclusive part of the.
Whoa.
Now, that being said, the $7,000 membership is still available.
Okay. So we would throw in a hat for that.
We'll throw in a hat for the $7,000 and we'll take you to Disneyland. That's still
you'll take them to Disneyland.
That is still in play. I actually had somebody ask me that the other day. Like, hey, is that still open? Like, if I give you $7,000, will you take me to Disneyland? I go, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's make it happen.
Have you been to Disneyland?
Actually planning on going to Disneyland for spring break.
Wow.
I have been to Disneyland twice. Once as a kid, once as an adult when Caleb was 2.
Okay.
So
and how do you feel about it? Like, are there people who have strong opinions, land versus world? Yes,
there are people who have very strong opinions. I actually find Disneyland to be very special because the Fantasyland is the original Fantasyland. They have things like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Like, they haven't changed it.
Oh, okay.
Whereas with the Magic Kingdom, they've done all sorts of crazy stuff to change all aspects of the park.
Yeah, it's like a Star Wars theme park now.
Pretty much, yeah. Whereas Disneyland, while they've added stuff, like the main original stuff is mostly intact.
They keep the main thing is what you're telling me.
Just like we do on the OG mailbag. Let's get after it.
Here's the mail that never fails. Makes me want to wag my tail when it comes to what a whale.
All right, this is from Elliot. And then we got some general questions cobbled together from various reaction to yesterday's show. But Elliot's response was a good way to get into it. Elliot says, actually, those big mountain guys are some of the most level-headed guys doing this sort of content. The sort of content that he's referring to is realignment content, which gets to the cobbled together general question that we got from comment sections, from email, from social media. The question is, if I can just distill it, how much time does the official extension of ESPN's TV deal with the ACC actually buy the conference? How much time does it buy you?
I guess it depends on what ESPN does with Carolina and Clemson.
So you buy this.
Duke.
You buy this argument that real quick about the big mountain guys. Real quick, I just want to be really, really clear about this.
Yeah,
I was being a dork about the mountain dudes and their YouTube channel. Like, I saw the big drywall.
Were you being a dork or were you being a dick?
No, I was being a dork. Like, I see the drywall. Come on, guys, put some stuff on the wall. Come on.
Okay.
Give me some Big Ten stuff. Give me some big mountain stuff.
Big mountain.
Give me some Mountain West stuff. Put Thunder Mountain on there, man.
Ooh.
You know?
Ooh.
That's all I was doing.
Ooh.
And where I might have been a dick was just in the general sense of how the YouTube SEO works for these types of this kind of content.
Well, you have radio scars on this very specific topic.
No, it's actually not radio scars.
No?
In the radio sense, I love this topic because it was an evergreen topic that there's really nothing going on today. It's a slow Wednesday. Hey, man, I know how to fill up some time.
How would you realign the content?
What I don't like is what YouTube has done to this particular topic, where it rewards very speculative headlines. And you're going, well, stop being a hater. I'm not being a hater. I'm telling you, I know this because I've done it in terms of experimenting with SEO on YouTube. And YouTube explicitly will tell you, hey, these are the videos that work. Maybe you should go back to doing something like this.
So get Bo tonight to talk about Noah Kanika.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Right.
That's
an evergreen.
Got it.
Okay. So those are the things.
He's not like Eastern Michigan now, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah.
By the way, like every other week, I get an uptick in that video because people want to know how you pronounce that game, right? So anyway, so I've seen this with this particular topic. A guy that I've done freelance
expansion.
Yeah, a guy that I've done freelance radio with him on ESPN. Guy's name is Tim Montemare.
Okay,
Tim Montemare, old radio guy, has completely shifted over to YouTube, very similar to what we've done. And he spends a good chunk of his time talking about realignment wildness. Now, he did it from the Pac-12 perspective, the Pac-10 perspective, and that gave him monster numbers. So he just comes up with a new topic. There's no possible way to talk about it every day. There's just not, unless you're chasing the algorithm. And I went and watched the segment. And this gets back to what you were referring to with ESPN. And I'm just having a hard time really buying that the TV networks are the ones that are really pulling the strings behind the scenes. When I listen to topics like this, what ends up happening is, well, I talk to somebody in the athletic department. I talk to somebody who's close to the situation, also that kind of stuff. If you take anything from our conversations with Holden Thorpe, the former chancellor at UNC, who was part of these expansion conversations, those on the low level might give you information like swam, who some swim coach told you that this expansion is going to rope in Virginia to the Big Ten.
Former NC State assistant swimming coach, Todd Sorbo.
If you learned anything from the Holden conversation, is that these decisions are made at the presidential level. Those were the conversations that are taking place. After that, it just becomes speculative stuff. And you and I both know, man, that people in the athletic department are on the same level as fans sometimes. They see something on social media with no context. They're like, what's this about? They go on message boards or somebody sends them something and it's like context free and they just start to talk. And something that I've learned over time is that they're just as easily duped by stuff that's floating out on the internet as you and I are, or fans are. So that's why I don't get too caught up in this kind of conversation.
Just as I say daily on this program, that college basketball, college football has changed, and it's a year-to-year proposition. There have been sweeping changes in those major sports.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you that the previous model was based on presidential decisions, chancellor decisions, university conference level decisions. I would say to you that while the Big Ten and SEC are getting further and further away from these other conferences and getting closer and closer to a professionalized model.
Yeah.
And I hope they get there sooner than later. I would just say to you that if you're ESPN, now this is a logic brain. This is not a college system. This is not I understand the Kremlin politique of how the sausage is made. This is more of just a logical, if I gave you a logic problem.
Okay.
And you were ESPN and you had a valuable property, you would say, how do I keep this valuable property? How do I make this valuable property want to stay with me? I think we all agree under any model, North Carolina is the number one brand that is available right now. That's not in the SEC and not in the Big Ten.
I would agree with you.
And I would say under the old model, we would look at Jim Delaney and North Carolina's connections and the Big Ten and all those other things and say, and don't dismiss the academic prestige of the Big Ten. Don't. Because again, you want to talk about old math, right? I do think there's a part of North Carolina that says to itself, the Big Ten is our future for a couple of different reasons, right? And this is the best way to help us, right? So if you're using your logic brain and your ESPN, you try to head off that logical problem at the pass and say, all right, I can understand why you might be interested in the Big Ten. How can I help you and interest you in putting you in the SEC and putting you in a position to be in one of these two power conferences and set you up for the future? Because what Carolina's done these last 3 months has announced their presence in the college football landscape.
Yeah.
That's what they've done.
Yeah.
Whether it was Bill Belichick's name or not, the investment that they're making is announcing their intentions.
Well, the brand for UNC goes up. Look, let's take the Mountain Guys premise. And they were talking about the value of Bill Belichick and how ESPN views Belichick as a ratings grabber in the same way as
slightly myopic. It was slightly myopic.
As Deion Sanders. That was something that they said is something that's being discussed. And I can see where behind the scenes people want to replicate the Colorado rating success to UNC because of Bill Belichick. But I'm here to tell you right now, it's a twofold issue. The biggest one is that Bill Belichick is not a charismatic personality that has the camera drawn to him in the same way that Deion Sanders does. Deion Sanders is one of one when it comes to that kind of stuff. He's one of one on the football field. He is one of one off the football field. Bill Belichick is not charismatic in any way, shape, or form. So it's almost like we've retconned this weird, like, oh yeah, people tuned into Bill Belichick in the NFL. No, they didn't. They made fun of Bill Belichick for his very combative relationship with the media. And I don't see that necessarily changing once we get into football season. And I don't see where people might do some rubbernecking on UNC, But if they're not good, people are going to check out. This is not like there's no big grand topic. There's no big societal discussion around Bill Belichick leaving where he was to go to college in the same way that Dion leaving an HBCU to a Power 5 conference school got the people going. It's just not there. So there's differences there. But specifically to ESPN and the TV angle about this, and this gets back to the question of how much time does this buy you? One thing that you have to remember is that a lot of these television deals are wrapping up around 2030, 2031. There's a blurb in the ESPN piece about the TV deal being extended through 2036 that when the ACC renegotiates or tries to settle with Clemson and Florida State, a lot of it has to do with the success initiatives, the unequal revenue share, all the things that we've discussed over the last couple of years. But in there was a blurb about how they would renegotiate the settlement to get out to maybe kind of greasing the wheels to get out by 2031, not make it as punitive. Okay. Fine. But that does not change what we've said the last couple of years about when things will get real, which has always been 2030 for a variety of reasons. One, that's when the television deals are running out. And it's also closer to the end of your grant of rights, which makes the buyout less.
Yeah, even Texas and Oklahoma didn't pay the full freight to get out.
So there's that.
Even they waited.
Okay, well, then that gets to the second part of this about Clemson and Florida State. And, people who are trying to cling on to this, see, we told you we were right. They're leaving. I'm like, okay, cool. You're convinced that they're leaving, but you need two things to be true in order for you to leave. One, you need to have the money to leave. So Florida State has been flirting with private equity. I was actually reading a story in Front Office Sports today about how the Big Ten is starting to flirt with private equity. That's where we're going with sports. They all will. So Florida State's whole big thing was, well, man, we're going to get this Saudi money and it's going to be FU money and we're going to leave. Okay, where has that been? Why has it not happened? Well, because that gets to the second part. You need a conference to go to. And I'm still not convinced that the SEC and the Big Ten are so willing to add another mouth to feed, because this is where the television networks and the reality of where we are with the television networks in terms of how much money are they generating. ESPN's in budget mode right now. And while they will pay for big properties to keep the NFL and whatnot, what is their appetite to throw a bunch more money to the SEC to add two more mouths to feed? So the SEC then gets into well, okay, so we need X amount of money to make this work for everybody else, or you need to take so much less money to come to this conference that it'll be good.
The SEC has not done a discounted deal yet.
Not yet. Also, what about Florida State's hubris tells you they'd be willing to take a discounted rate unless there's enough private equity money to make up the lost revenue?
Things that we've said all along, and I think things we'll say till we die or proven wrong. The SEC does not want Clemson or Florida State.
I agree.
Straight up.
I agree.
Do not want them. I do think there would be a value to the Big Ten, a la Oregon and Washington, for them to go to Clemson and Florida State and say, here's the discounted rate to get into our league. Take it or leave it. And I think they would both take it.
Okay.
I do. Because as SMU has just shown you, you don't necessarily need the conference money, A, if you have some sort of other subsidy. And then B, now all of a sudden, you're not sharing. What else are you not sharing? Right? Yeah. Ticket revenue, suite revenue, all those things that they already have and don't share with the ACC. That value goes up when you get Ohio State coming to town once every other year, Michigan coming to town, all of the different newer matchups that you get that your fan bases would, have kind of glazed over. Like, I went to the State game when State was in the top 10 down there, and it was a night game, and they got juiced up for it.
Yeah.
You think they gave two shits about playing NC State this year?
No.
Not a single fuck was given about playing NC State this year.
And to put a wrap on this, as far as buying
but
time,
but the SEC hasn't done a discounted rate yet. Now, but I'll tell you where the SEC's discounted rate comes, and we talked about this during the year.
Okay.
The SEC needs some marks. That's what they need, and they would love for an NC State to come in and go 1-7 every season.
I see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have no marks in their league right now.
Yeah.
And you could sit here and say, oh no, NC State would come in and they would go, buddy, they can't even go better than 8-4 in the ACC.
Hey, what makes you think they're going to compete? Well, they got more money.
And,
yeah. So does Vanderbilt.
And they're going to invite you in to be the mark, to be the sucker, because the Big Ten has a lot of suckers.
They do.
We saw that this year, a lot of suckers. And you know what a sucker says? Cool. Just Bring me my money.
Yeah.
Bring me my money.
That's cool.
So if you're NC State and you think you have a package deal with Carolina, which I still will question, that might be cool. But you might get invited. You just might get invited for the wrong reason. The Big Ten doesn't need any more marks. That's why I say the Big Ten will make a discounted rate to bring Florida State and Clemson to get them into markets that they're not in.
Yeah.
And would help their television brand, which they're already talking about in terms of, hey, how do we play more games that people are more interested in? NBC in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have the third choice on that deal, and they're getting Northwestern versus Illinois on a Saturday night, and they're like, meanwhile, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, Oregon are all playing games that matter on different channels. So I think the Big Ten has done this as smart as way as you possibly can do it. I think the SEC is the one who's looking at it going, okay, I don't want to help Clemson, who's in a market that is competing with Georgia and Alabama. I don't want to help Florida State competing with those same power brands. But I got no problem helping a Carolina football program that hasn't done jack shit since 1980. I don't have a problem with helping an NC State football program that all they can do is produce pros and have a great tailgate, but can't get out of their own way and win so much as 10 games.
Yeah.
Like they would have zero. And, oh, you want to bring Duke too? Cool. Bring them.
The problem with any of these conversations is I want you to go back and think about where we were with college athletics in 2019. Because this is where we are with the mental math too. Think about where college athletics was in 2019 and how much has changed from 2019 to today.
19 was still markets, or 19 was
just in general, from everything from house to the television landscape. I mean, I'm talking about everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's a pandemic mixed in there that changed a lot of stuff, but I don't know how the next 6 years is going to play out. Right. I really don't. Nobody can sit here and tell you definitively where things are going. I can tell you where the trends are. And that's what gets back to the television aspect of this. And if this were 2019 and you were telling me ESPN was the one pulling the strings, I'd be more inclined to believe you. But I don't know if ESPN is necessarily coming from a power position these days, especially considering where they are as a company. I mean, it's entirely possible by the time we get to 2031 that Disney no longer owns ESPN.
Sure.
So these are just things it might be owned by a gambling company by 2031.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a good chance.
I don't know.
Or Dogecoin or
who
whatever.
knows? So that's why I get a little queasy, like trying to predict. I'm like, oh, I totally know what's going to happen between now and 2030.
But I think you and I
we don't know.
But you and I both see if it becomes professionalized and it becomes
if it
guaranteed spots and all this other stuff, you're going to have more people take an SMU worldview of I'd rather just be at the table.
Yep.
I don't care if you're paying me to be at the table. Yep. I just want to chip in a chair.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
You've got mail.
All right, this one comes to us from Brandon. Did you see that Bill Conley from ESPN put out his way too early college football playoff bracket for next year, and that it includes UNC? Question: Is it simply the Belichick effect, or is UNC plus Belichick combo the thing? If NC State had hired Belichick, would they be getting this much love?
I will keep this paper. I will frame it and sign it to whoever needs it. This is the reason that people are interested in North Carolina.
Yeah, the bracket projection that I saw from ESPN that one of our listeners had pointed out to me as well was UNC.
Are you sure that's Connolly?
As 11th. This is just college football playoff per ESPN. That was one of them.
Right.
I don't know if that's Connolly. I just know that's one of the ESPN projections.
Connolly's a math guy.
Yes.
The math would not say that Carolina's roster is going to get you to the playoff.
But the
math would not. The schedule. And then you can't tell because it's like this is some real chicken scratch. In the green, if the colors are coming through, that's Carolina's scoring defensive ranking since 16.
Okay.
It's got awful. Okay. The one thing I know for sure that Carolina's going to be, I don't care if it's a lacrosse player, if it's a bingo player, if it's a trumpet player, Carolina's going to be 1,000 times better on defense next year. 1,000.
Sure.
That is the only thing I can guarantee you about this Carolina football team. They will not beat themselves and they will be excellent on defense. I know this. Okay. Now you combine that with a schedule that is absolute horseshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of the worst schedules I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So I think even with just adequate talent on offense, a significant upgrade on defense, they go 10-2 and you put him in that bracket. That's what I think. Now, if he was hired by NC State, I mean, man, I'm not even going to get into what NC State doesn't do, but obviously they've never been capable of making such a move.
Let's say for the sake of the conversation, Bill Cowher ends up taking the NC State job just for shits and giggles.
But they can't even do that. They can't even talk him into that.
Let's just say they do. Let's just say that Bill Cowher has a change of heart here and he decides, yeah, man, I want to go toe to toe with Bill Belichick.
Urban Meyer.
No. It's got to be Cowher.
Okay.
It's got to be Cowher. He's a Super Bowl champ. He's Steelers legend, all that kind of stuff. He's coming home. He's got the family tie, obviously. I don't know if Bill Belichick's first, he's a state guy, all that kind of stuff, right? It still wouldn't be the same.
No. Because
NC State just doesn't have the brand. It's as simple as that. Carolina has the brand. NC State does not. You combine those two things, this is what you get. I don't know how else to put it. From Nick. Gentlemen. We are not gentlemen, but thank you. Cam Newton said he wouldn't trade his MVP for a Super Bowl ring. Y'all buying that? I saw this question and I went, wait, what? So I went over to Awful Announcing because that's like the repository of show clips. I'm like, did he say it on his podcast? Shout out to Blue Wire, right? Because Cam Newton and this podcast, I mean, we're together, company men, right?
Colleagues
at Blue Wire. So did he say this on his podcast? I looked on the podcast feed, didn't see anything about that. Turns out it was on First Take. And Stephen A. Smith posed this question. Here is the clip.
Pales in comparison to a championship. We've got a former league MVP right here on the set right now in Cam. I ask you, Cam, if you could give back that league MVP for a Super Bowl championship, would you do it?
No.
Oh. Really?
Why?
Because you have to ask it through this lens. That was a very journalistic viewpoint or vantage point or response, Stephen A. I'll ask you this question, and just to pose this thought: what's more important, impact or championships? You look at a guy like Allen Iverson, or you stood up on the table and blah 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 blah. Everybody's not going to be Michael Jordan. Everybody's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. Everybody's not going to be these individuals who have the luxury of saying, hey, I not only dominated this sport, but I also have championships to back it. Like, let me remind you, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Respectfully, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. So, yes, when you look at those guys and you say, okay, what's more important? Would you have preferred to win a Super Bowl? I think that's the humble approach. But if we're being honest, the impact of you holding yourself accountable to say everybody has a responsibility to do. And you can say as an MVP award winner or an All-American, you've held yourself or you've held your end of the bargain down. And that's what it really comes down to for me. I know that's not the popular pick. I'm trying to be popularized. But my take is I'm taking individual success because I did my job. Football is not about one guy trying to do 11 jobs. It's 11 guys doing one job. And if everybody does their job best, famous words of our coach, Belichick, just do your job.
I think he was trying to talk himself into that one.
I look, Cam's an interesting dude, always has been. He always thinks about things differently, and I'll always appreciate him for that. I get what he's trying to say. I just don't know if he said it in the best way possible to get his point across. By invoking Brad Johnson, by invoking Nick Foles, by invoking a Hasselbeck, right? That is or Trent Dilfer, I should say. That is a very good way to point out just because you're a quarterback who wins a Super Bowl doesn't elevate you into the category of quarterbacks we talk about or quarterbacks we understand to have an impact on the game. So I think what Cam is getting at, it's actually tied to something that I was thinking about this week with all the conversation around Josh Allen. Okay. There used to be a time when we talked about sports that you could recognize great quarterbacks even if they didn't win a Super Bowl. Dan Marino is the prime example of this.
Well, for most of his career, John Elway, too.
there's a difference between one of the best to never win it versus I'm holding this against you that you never won a Super Bowl. That if you dismiss Dan Marino's career because he never won a Super Bowl, well, then you're being idiotic. If John Elway never wins those 2 Super Bowls because he doesn't have Terrell Davis running the damn ball, which is something that Dan Marino never had in Miami, shout out to Sammy Smith, then you're being idiotic. If you say that John Elway wasn't one of the best to ever do it, or he didn't have this impact on the game, just look at the stats, look at the categories, everything else. So I think what Cam is trying to say, and one that I agree with, and I think this applies to Josh Allen, and this is where the quarterback we're talking about matters. Cam already has the built-in Cam makes people stupid aspect of this. We would have an easier time talking about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen if we accepted you could still be a great quarterback, even if you never got to the Super Bowl, even if you never won a Super Bowl. Like we were actually even getting to the point where, well, why'd you only win one?
Right.
Right? Because, Tom Brady's and Patrick Mahomes are just a dime a dozen. We basically act like if you don't win multiple Super Bowls, well, then you're just a piece of shit. It's a very strange thing. And it's almost dismissive of the fact that Tom Brady's got 7 of these, that Patrick Mahomes is on this trajectory right now and they could win 3 in a row. That's just super easy to do. No, man, it's not. So you should, and also the other issue too is it's what started off as a joke with pro football and with PFT commenter back in the day when Pardon My Take first got started. The whole is Joe Flacco elite was a joke. It was like a meme argument. But now it's become a legitimate conversation where I can tune into ESPN on any given day, and we're having conversations today on January 31st about whether or not Joe Burrow is elite. Why are we talking about that today? We don't have to talk about that today. It's okay.
Nothing else to talk about.
There's plenty of other shit to talk about.
There's a lot to get into.
There is. Also shows you just how bad college basketball is, where you can't get any juice out of Duke, Carolina. You can't get any juice about John Calipari going back to Kentucky. You can't get juice out of that? That's an easy sports talk radio conversation, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's very, very strange to me that we've gotten to that point. So I actually agree with Cam.
One of the great all-time returns in sports history. Tell us yours.
Right. Exactly. Or
444-2211.
Or no, I mean, the obvious one is, John Calipari is going back to Kentucky. The base question is it okay for fans to boo him, or should they appreciate what he did at Kentucky? Well, what would that the equivalent be of somebody coming back? Like, what if Roy Williams left Carolina? What if the roles were reversed?
He left Kansas.
No, what I'm saying is, what if the roles were reversed? What if Roy left for Kansas and he came back to play UNC? How would you treat that? I mean, now, man.
444-2211.
I got the juices flowing right now. But back to Cam real quick. Cam doesn't do himself any favors when he said, I view the individual award better than the other thing. That's where he screws himself in the conversation.
I really do appreciate Cam. You are you're a Cam fanboy for sure.
Okay.
You are a known Cam fanboy. That's fine.
Fair.
That's fine.
Fair.
I appreciate Cam in his media role now because he has a different view than pretty much anyone else talking about football. And not only do I enjoy his podcast, I enjoy that he's now getting a chance on ESPN to expand those thoughts.
Sure.
I think that's a good thing. This is one of those times, though, like when you sit back and, you write for the paper, or you sit back and listen to the radio and you say to yourself, well, I can do that. And then all of a sudden, Stephen A. Smith springs something on you. And your initial reaction is you want to disagree. And then all of a sudden you can see it in real time. Like he's trying to, build his argument. And then he's like, I'm losing. That's what happened there.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what he's making 2 different points, right? He's making 2 different points. His point, which is the one he made, which was great, 2 years ago when everyone got in his shit. Like, if you were so good, you'd still be in the NFL.
Oh, the game manager versus.
And it's like, no,
game changer.
God almighty, let the man speak.
He was right.
Listen to what he's saying.
He was right.
This is more of like, there are people who, this is the Robert Horry conundrum, right?
Right.
The people who are like, well, Michael Jordan's the best because he's got 6 titles. Okay, well, Robert Horry's got 9. So he's better, right?
He's better, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I was going to say, you see how silly that argument is?
It is. So, but to your point, there's an argument that can be made in different times in a different way, and of the true footballers, right? That Dan Marino is actually the best quarterback of all time. He actually is.
But he had no rings.
Skill-wise.
Yeah.
He was doing things in the 80s that No one else did. Like,
Right.
It was like a true Babe Ruthian level of his passing yardage and passing touchdowns.
If
he
Dan Marino were coming up today, he would be the equivalent of like the football tape eaters would be just going on and on and on.
the
and on
release.
And on.
But I'm saying like the equivalent of what Dan Marino did then today would be for him throwing for 6,000 yards with 70 touchdowns.
Sure.
We would be like, the way we would talk about that player would just be like,
right.
You know?
But he never won a Super Bowl, Joe.
But never won a Super Bowl.
He only went to one.
And he only got one.
He only went to
as
one.
a rookie.
Never went back.
Never
what does that tell you?
And never went back.
What does that tell you?
And it's like, okay.
It also kind of depends on who the quarterback is. I mean, Aaron Rodgers rode one Super Bowl up until he became problematic.
Well, he got one.
No, but what I'm saying is,
no, I'm saying, but he's only been to one too.
He been to one. He went to one. He won one. But as things progressed, it went from, I don't understand who has one, but that's on coaching. Blah 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 blah. And next thing you know, now it's all like,
think about
we're
both
reassessing it.
Think about both Green Bay legends, though.
Favre
and Rodgers.
Yeah.
Like that speaks to your point about how the Patriots we diminish what they actually did. We're doing the same thing with the Chiefs right now.
Right. We act as though this kind of thing is like really easy to do, man. We're watching greatness. Like, relax on that. From a 919, can y'all do some investigative journalism into what happened to Brent Burns' family water? That Connecticut commercial has me concerned. You know the commercial in reference, right?
So this isn't just you need healthy water. Like this is like a dying dog in the street, violin music playing.
Yeah.
And he's talking and giving you like this ominous warning that, we had a serious problem with our family water.
Yeah.
Until
until this water system came in. Right. Although you're tapped out on investigative journalism because you actually had to do some you actually did some big boy capital J journalism yesterday at the arena.
A lot of heavy lifting last night
with the Miko home debut.
A lot of heavy
got his
lifting
goal, got to the bottom of the number swap.
I did.
Right?
I did.
Feel good?
I do. I feel alive.
Like you still got it?
I could still
on the beat.
I could still throw that speedball by you.
I'm getting that football in the tire. Watch me go, right? All right. Without knowing what happened with the Burns family and the water system, I have a theory because it happened to me.
Whoa.
Okay. I have a theory.
Whoa.
So our house is an old ass house from 1961. The water main at some point in time was an old copper pipe that eroded and it started to leak into the ground. So this was a few years ago. We had a bunch of snow. I want to say this was like 22 maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe, I don't know. Might have been a couple years before that. It was after we had gotten some snow.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was pre-pandemic.
It was pre-pandemic. Thank you. It was pre-pandemic. We got some snow. And you know how it is in North Carolina this time of the year. If the sun hits it, it'll melt. If the sun never touches it, that snow's going to sit there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a section in our front yard that it looked like there was a patch of snow that was taking a while to melt. So time goes on, walking down the hill, because not my house. It's like this big old hill. And I see like it's still kind of like damp down in this one section in front of the house. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. The sun's not hitting it. It's going to take a while to dry off. Week goes by. Still's kind of muddy back there. Well, that's kind of weird. Another week goes by. Still muddy. I'm like, what the hell's going on, man?
Mm-hmm.
So I go over there and I see it's like standing water. And I put my hands down into the mud and I just try like, what's going on? And sure enough, water just starts to bubble up.
Oh.
I'm like, this isn't good. So it turns out I had, from the city of Raleigh, the water main from the up on the street down to the main part of the house had leaked, had just corroded over time, hadn't been replaced. So, I call up a couple plumbers, which we'll talk about next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go through.
I'm excited about that.
I had to go through all this process, get a new water main. They had to dig a trench, all that kind of fun stuff, right? I started putting two and two together as to why Caleb was constantly getting sick. His stomach was bothering him all the time. This was at an age, so this is a really long time ago. This was at an age where Caleb was still doing the thing where he was drinking bath water, like, they're goofing around, they're in the tub, whatever. Sometimes they'll swallow some bath water, whatever it is. Or they're just drinking from the tap or whatever it was. And he was constantly getting sick. His stomach was bothering him all the time. Finally put two and two together that who the hell knows what was contaminated and coming from the ground into the main water system, right? So if I had to guess, that is what Burns is talking about, and they got it solved. So there you go. That's my theory. That's my theory.
That's deep. I just thought, now that I've learned such things in TV and radio.
This is serious conversation here, man.
Yeah, I thought they just made it up.
Nah.
They're just like, oh man, hey, I used to have a water problem, but not anymore.
Nah, that's not it. That's the kind of investigative, speculative journalism you're going to get on this program.
Okay.
That's going to wrap it up for the free portion of the OG mailbag, which is brought to you by the Butcher's Market. Check them out, thebutchersmarkets.com. You've got a big game coming up next week. You want to get that thing catered, or perhaps I just like saying that. Like, we're not bound by FCC rules, so it's whatever. I just like saying the big game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the big game coming up, maybe you want to bring some buffalo chicken dip to the big game. They've got it. It's fantastic.
Maybe you have a super Sunday planned.
So yeah, go check out thebutchersmarkets.com. From here on out, it is for OG fans. Go to ogtrianglemedia.com to be an OG fan subscriber today.